Hi everyone, and welcome back to English for You. I'm Pat.
Hi, and I'm Nikki.
We're on day 2 of our literature article, reading the story of The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold.
We met the main character, Susie. Yesterday, she was a normal, lively high school student, but she's murdered.
Her spirit lives on though and sees what happens after her death.
She watches her family grieve, and various people try to find out what happened.
Her father and her sister Lindsay, so Jack and Lindsay, they think it's Mr. Harvey, which is true, we know that, but there's no evidence.
But Susie's spirit watches Mr. Harvey and finds out he has killed other women and children.
Jack tries to find out what's happened when the police's trail goes cold. However, this affects his life and his marriage breaks down.
One person who might be able to help is Ruth, Susie's classmate.
Ruth sees Susie's spirit and knows something is wrong. She also forms a close friendship with Ray Singh, Susie's old sweetheart.
So now let's find out what happens next.
Reading The Lovely Bones. Jack's suspicions about Mr. Harvey remain strong. He still can't find proof, so Lindsay decides to break into Mr. Harvey's house to search for evidence. Susie watches in terror as Mr. Harvey comes home early and almost catches her sister. Lindsay has found nothing, and soon after, Mr. Harvey moves away. Years later, Mr. Harvey visits Norristown. He's driving through when he passes Ruth. Suddenly, she sees all the women he has killed and passes out. This allows Susie to possess her. In Ruth's body, Susie is finally able to say goodbye to Ray. The experience teaches Ruth that the dead are all around, and she begins working to share her knowledge. Susie is back in heaven, but her killer is still at large. She returns to watch over him, and before long sees him meet his end. While stalking his next victim in a rural part of the northeastern U.S., he slips and falls into a ravine. Though he was never caught, Susie feels at peace. No one else will be a victim of Mr. Harvey's wicked ways.
So day 2 of the article starts by saying, Jack's suspicions about Mr. Harvey remain strong. So yesterday we saw the word suspect. He suspects Mr. Harvey. And the word suspicion is a related word. If you have suspicions about someone, you have some ideas that they have done something bad or wrong, but you just can't prove it. You have a strong feeling, maybe a little bit of evidence, but not enough to make other people believe it for sure. For example, we could say, the police have their suspicions about the witness. They think that he is lying.
Suspicion 是名词，指的就是怀疑。那我们昨天呢有提到 suspect 怀疑这个动词，所以呢，也就是说，当你怀疑某人 when you suspect someone, it means that you have suspicions about someone. 你可能就是不信任他，或者是怀疑他做了某件事。So Jack needs more evidence.
Right, and he goes looking for it. Remember, we said he was taking matters into his own hands. Yes, and we see that he still can't find proof. So Lindsay, that's the sister, decides to break into Mr. Harvey's house to search for evidence. Now remember, we talked about proof and evidence yesterday. Proof is a kind of evidence that shows 100% that something is true or not. Evidence is just facts, details, information that tells you things. Proof is evidence that shows something for sure. We can say it proves it. P-R-O-V-E, prove, this is the verb form. So, for example, we could say, during the court case, the lawyer showed some proof that the man was guilty.
Proof 是名词，和 evidence 一样是证据的意思，但是 proof 和相较之下呢是比较 concrete 的，几乎是100%确定的事情。那例句说，在审查中，律师提出了一些证据来证明这个人有罪。 And to get to this proof, Lindsay breaks into Mr. Harvey's house.
That's right. To break into somewhere means to enter that place illegally. Like you're going into someone's house or a shop to steal something, maybe through the window which you've broken or through the door that you've kind of broken into.
Break into 指的就是闯进或者是闯入一个地方，那这边指的就是 Lindsay 那个妹妹她闯空门的意思。
So, what does she find in the house? Well, we see that Susie's spirit is watching as this is happening, and we see Susie watches in terror as Mr. Harvey comes home early and almost catches her sister. And of course, if he had caught her, no doubt he would have killed her too, which is why Susie felt terror. Terror is like fear, but even stronger. It's like super fear.
之后 Susie 就看着她的妹妹闯进 Mr. Harvey 的家里，但Mr. Harvey 因为提早回家，所以差点抓到他的妹妹。So Susie watches in terror. Terror 是名词，指的就是恐惧、超级害怕。她边看边觉得死定了，她妹妹要被抓到了。So Lindsay got away, but did she get any proof?
The article says Lindsay has found nothing, and soon after, Mr. Harvey moves away.
Next, we see that years later, Mr. Harvey visits Norristown.
Norristown, yeah. Years later, Mr. Harvey comes back, and we learn that he's driving through when he passes Ruth. And of course, yeah, we remember there's a connection between Ruth and Susie's spirit.
Here's what happens. The article says, suddenly she sees all the women he has killed and passes out.
That's Ruth. So she suddenly has this like a vision, like, oh my God, passes out. To pass out means to faint. So your brain kind of cuts out for a moment due to fear or heat or even excitement, something like that. People who pass out often fall down and they're not awake for a few moments.
Pass out 意思就是昏厥或是昏倒 or we can also use the term black out, 也是失去知觉的意思。So Ruth's mind kind of goes away for a moment.
That's right, and we see that this allows Susie to possess her. Now here the word possess means to control another person's body. We often see it in books and stories, movies. It's often a ghost or something with special powers who can take over another person's mind and body.
Possess 是动词，在这边指的就是附身，像是被恶灵或者是鬼怪附身的那种附身。那在这边呢，指的就是 Susie 的灵魂跑进去 Lindsay 的身体里面控制她。那 possess 还有
Ruth,
控制她。那 possess 还有另一个意思是拥有 to have or to own something. And what does Susie do?
Well, the story says, in Ruth's body, Susie is finally able to say goodbye to Ray. Remember, that's the sweetheart.
We also see that the experience teaches Ruth that the dead are all around, and she begins working to share her knowledge.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of a general improvement for everyone.
在刚刚我们提到的 dead， 我们会用 the 再加上一个形容词，泛指这个族群或是这个类型的人。那这时候它就是一个复数名词，那要用复数的动词来搭配。For example, the rich 指的就是有钱的人，那 the poor 指的就是穷困的人，或者是the elderly 指的就是年长的人。
So this is kind of taking care of part of the story. We know that kind of Susie and Ray have said goodbye. Ruth's kind of had a change. But what else do we need to wrap up? Well, let's get back to the article, which says Susie is back in heaven. So she's left Ruth. But her killer is still at large. If someone is at large, they are free and able to move around. No one has caught them. We often use this to describe a criminal or someone who is suspected of a crime, and we use it to show that they haven't been caught yet, they're still free.
课文继续说到，这个杀人犯还在外逍遥 ，at large 指的就是逍遥法外，还没有被抓到。The killer is still out there.
Right. And next we see that she, Susie, returns to watch over him. So she's left heaven again.
And then came back.
Right. And the article says, and before long, sees him meet his end. So let's look at the word return first. It means to come back from a place. You go out, you return. You go to school, you return home. For you could say, our teacher stepped out of the classroom, but returned after a minute.
Return 是动词，在课文这边的意思是返回 come back 的意思。那 return 还有另一个意思呢，是 to give something back to where it came from. For example, I have to return the books from the library. 例句说，我们的老师走出教室，但过一下又回来了。And what does it mean that Susie see when she returned?
Well, she sees Mr. Harvey meet his end. To meet one's end usually means to die or to experience your kind of final fate. So that could be like being put in prison. But mainly to see someone's end means to die. Meet one's end, die.
Meet one's end, 或者是 meet one's death, 指的就是死掉了，或者是他最后的下场。So what happens?
The article says, while stalking his next victim in a rural part of the northeastern US, he slips and falls into a ravine. We have a few words to look at in this sentence, the first of which is stalk. To stalk is to pursue or approach someone in a very secret, careful way so they can't see you and don't realize you're coming. Think of a cat or even a big cat like a lion or tiger kind of moving through the grass or the trees, about to jump on another animal.
Stalk 是动词，意思就是跟踪，那可能就是你偷偷跟在人家后面，但是人家没有发现。那通常这种非法跟踪骚扰的人呢，我们就会说他是一个 stalker, someone who illegally follows and watches someone.
That's right, and in the most cases, the stalker will have a victim. So Mr. Harvey is stalking his victim. Another young girl, probably, because a victim is someone who has something done to them. Maybe they're robbed or attacked or killed or hit by a car. Something bad has happened to them and it's not their fault. You could be the victim of an accident, but you can also be the victim of a crime. For example, we could say, the police spoke to the victim and asked for a description of the man who robbed her.
Victim 是名词，指的就是受害者。那这个故事的主角 Susie 就是受害者之一，她受到 Mr. Harvey 的毒手，而 Mr. Harvey 又寻找更多的受害者。And this takes place in a rural area.
That's right. The word rural describes the countryside, so away from cities and towns and areas with lots of houses. A rural area would be in the middle of nature, so there'd be more animals and fewer people. The opposite of rural is urban, U-R-B-A-N, urban, which means to do with cities and towns. For example, we could say, Ian doesn't like living in rural areas because he doesn't think there's much to do.
Rural 是形容词，指的是乡村或者是农村的，比较人烟稀少而且尚未被开发的地方。那它的相反词呢，就是城市的 urban。例句说 ，Ian 不喜欢居住在乡村地区，因为他觉得没有什么事情好做。But things go wrong and Mr. Harvey slips and falls.
That's right, and he falls into a ravine. A ravine is a narrow gorge or valley with steep sides, often with a river at the bottom. Now, the main point is that there are two high points, steep sides, and which are quite close together, and there is a drop. So I guess you could think of Taroko Gorge. It's too wide to be a real ravine, but in there are places where the walls are very narrow. That would be more like a ravine.
Ravine 指的就是峡谷或者是深谷，所以我们看到 Mr. Harvey 他掉进了峡谷。So now Mr. Harvey is dead.
That's right. So it's kind of almost like a happy ending, but does he get punished? Hard to say. The article says, though he was never caught, Susie feels at peace.
And this is because no one else would be a victim of Mr. Harvey's wicked ways.
That's right. So there's another use of the word victim. It means he's not going to kill any more young girls, any more women, that kind of thing. Now, the word wicked means evil, wrong, nasty. It's used to describe someone who is doing bad things and they don't care. Because a wicked person doesn't care about hurting others. They will do whatever they need to do as long as it benefits them. Here is a classic example from a story. The wicked queen made a poisoned apple and gave it to Snow White.
Wicked 是形容词，指的就是坏的或者是邪恶的。It's the same as evil. 我们常常会看到它被用来形容一些坏人的角色啊。For example, the Wicked Witch in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
绿野仙踪。
Okay, so yeah, that is the end of The Lovely Bones. I guess the title kind of relates to the bones of all the different people. I'm not sure. You said there is a movie, right?
Yeah, I've seen the movie.
Okay.
But I've never seen the book.
Okay, so maybe the movie's slightly different. But that is the end of it. Susie goes back to heaven. The killer is dead, although never went to prison. We've got a bit more to talk about. We've got to talk about some of the themes, some of the ideas, some of the other things in this story. But right now, we're going to go to today's For You Chat question.
You chat.
So today's question kind of relates to sort of what happens with Lindsay in the story. She goes into Mr. Harvey's house to look for evidence.
Almost got caught.
Exactly, and she would have been killed. She took a big risk. She put herself in danger to try and find the evidence, help her dad out, find the killer. So the question is, have you ever taken a big risk to help a friend or a family member?
I think when I was in high school, we couldn't really be in any kinds of relationship with other people.
Okay.
So I had this friend who had a boyfriend, and our teacher asked me, like, do you know this, Nikki? Do you know about this? Can you tell me?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I kind of lied for her. I said, no, they're just friends.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, but the teacher was really mad because she found out after that.
Did she find out that you knew?
I think she kind of knew, but she didn't say anything. But I was so scared that I might get punished or anything.
But what kind of punishment can you get? I mean, you didn't do anything wrong. I think that's a risk worth taking. You're trying. You are protecting people.
Yeah, I'm trying to help a friend.
Exactly. So that's worth doing. I don't think I've ever taken that kind of risk. I don't think I've ever put myself in real danger of punishment or certainly physical danger to help a friend or a family member, something like that. I would think the only thing I might have done is put myself at a sort of financial risk. Like
for other people?
Yeah, maybe. So like maybe indirectly, like doing something that might, changing a job or taking a new job that if it works out, it means I'll be able to have money for my family. But if it doesn't work out, it could be end up losing money, something like that. So moving jobs a couple of times in the last few years. I could say moving to Taiwan was a big risk, but it wasn't going to affect any of my friends or family members. It would only affect me. So that's kind of different from what the question is talking about here. So I think, therefore, you're probably a little braver than I have.
I was in high school. I could do anything.
All right. I just never have been in that situation where I've needed to take some kind of risk of the sort that's talked about in this story. Okay, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Join us again tomorrow as we discuss some of the themes and other kind of interesting ideas that we find in The Lovely Bones. We'll see you then. Bye for now.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review. Suspicion. Pete had a suspicion that his sister took his jacket. So he looked in her closet to find out. Proof. Kathy forgot to sign out of her email account, leaving proof that she used her brother's computer without asking. Return. Randy left the house but returned a few minutes later because he forgot his wallet. Victim. Many people are sending money to the victims who lost their homes and families in the big earthquake. Rural. I used to live in a rural area without a regular bus service, so it was hard to travel to other places. Wicked. Hugo was a wicked child who hurt his pets and often took money out of his mother's purse.
智慧小补帖
Terror. Possess. Stalk. Ravine.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net